Conversations with Elders, hosted by yours truly, Louis Marie Blanche, welcoming you to Glastonbury Radio 432, where we will be TED Talking in tongues with the elders of all ages, all generations, all races, cultures, and creeds. All gender, religious, or political preferences will be honored and encouraged on Glastonbury Radio 432, Conversations with Elders, where it is our treasured pleasure to roll out the red carpet of golden liquid love light to you in honor of the queendom come, soul dancing free to life's heartbeat drum, in honor of mother, daughter, sister, lover, priestess, goddess, friend, sharing the blessings of love's perfect stranger, Deja Vu, welcoming you to Glastonbury Radio 432.
It's too cosmic, much too cosmic for me. Much too cosmic.
Aloha, hola, aho, hello. We are here again with Deborah L. Kelley on Conversations with Elders, and we have been taking the most beautiful and profound journey through the Garden of the Desert Rose, written by my beloved Deborah L. Kelley. And we are starting and finishing with chapter 25, which is entitled, I Had a Dream. And I will now read the quotation that leads us into I Had a Dream. I had an experience. I can't prove it. I can't even explain it. Everything that I know as a human being, everything that I am tells me that it was real. I was given something wonderful, something that changed me forever, a vision of the universe that tells us undeniably how tiny and insignificant and how rare and precious we all are. A vision that tells us that we belong to something that is greater than ourselves, that we are not, that none of us are alone. The character of Dr. Eleanor Arroway in the movie Contact.
The grandfather clock was chiming 9. The sky was still salting the earth as Lenny and the children stepped into the front yard. The flakes were large, almost as if they'd married other flakes on their way down from the sky before they landed on hats and overcoats. Within minutes, Lenny, Mac, and Elizabeth all looked as if they were coated in sugary white frosting. Elizabeth's new red and yellow stocking cap hung so low, Lassie tried to bite the tassel off the top as Elizabeth ran. The color of the stripes reminded Lenny of her angry snake. It seemed her outside world often mirrored her inside world. And this was good because it reminded her of the importance of mindful presence. After the bottom ball of a snowman was finished, Lenny sat on the ground and looked up. It had stopped snowing and the morning was whisper quiet. Lenny was watching Max stack up a mountain of small snowballs for his glorious war game when another movement caught her eye. It was Miss Tallulah's curtains being pushed aside. Lenny saw her neighbor's head pressed against her window pane. Lenny waved. The curtain closed. She helped Elizabeth make a small ball for the snowman's middle section. They lifted it into place and then patted it with more snow to make it slick. Mac announced he already had a great snowman head. He walked over and stuck one of his little snowballs on top of their creation. No, Elizabeth screamed, that it is too small. No, it isn't, Elizabeth, Mac answered. He's a pinhead snowman. The siblings chased each other in circles, throwing snowballs and falling on the ground. As the children rolled in the snow, Lenny decided to give Miss Tallulah one more call. She walked up the steep incline to her neighbor's house Noticing when she got to the door, the jar of cookies was nowhere in sight. Lenny rang the doorbell. "Who's there?" Miss Tallulah demanded in a frightened voice. "It's Lenny, your neighbor, Miss Tallulah. I wondered if you might like to come out and play in the snow with my children and me. We're having so much fun." The door opened with a rattle. To Lenny, it sounded as if Miss Tallulah had several security latches on her door. The old woman's dark hair was twisted up and held in place by crisscross bobby pins. She was wearing a dark purple chenille bathrobe that made her purplish roots look even brighter. Lenny tried not to stare at them. I know you're my Santa, Lenny," Miss Tallulah said in a not-so-friendly tone of voice. "How could I not? You were dancing and singing about as if you'd lost your mind." "Well, have you?" "No," Lenny responded with a laugh. "Well, actually, Miss Tallulah, I'm sure I lost it years ago. But the best thing I've lost recently is my anger towards you. You see, I had this snake dream, and then I fell into a deep well, and it's a little complicated to explain. Actually, my granny, had she lived, might have been about your age. She always told me to stop spilling my guts to strangers. But you're not really a stranger." What kind of dream?" Miss Tallulah asked, looking more than a little startled. "A snake dream, but that's not all. Just think of it as a breakthrough. Then I had an even more amazing dream last night. You see, Miss Tallulah, I dream wondrously. I really do. And I really feel we might someday become better neighbors. I'm going to do so much better keeping somebody. And I really feel we might someday become better neighbors. I'm going to do much better keeping Lassie out of your yard. And you are right. Female dogs as beautiful as my Lassie are bound to attract a yard full of male dogs. You have the prettiest azalea bushes in the neighborhood, and it's such a shame your one bush died. Come spring, I will buy you a new bush. Just tell me the variety you would like, and I'll even come over and plant it for you. I promise." "That is very considerate, Lenny," Miss Tallulah said, still sounding a bit formal, but not quite as unfriendly. "I accept your gift and your offer." Lenny's neighbor moved away from the door and had almost closed it when Lenny screamed, "Wait!" "Yes, what is it?" Miss Tallulah said impatiently. "I can't stand here jagging away all the day with the door open. I've no desire to heat up the whole neighborhood." "Well, can you come out and play?" Lenny asked with a smile. "You didn't answer my question." "Come out and play? Lenny, don't be ridiculous. I'm an old woman." "Does one ever get too old to play?" Lenny asked, using her most serious tone of voice. "I don't think so. And besides, how long has it been since you saw snow on Christmas Day in East Tennessee?" "Well, that's true. And I can't say I recall when that might have been, but it's freezing outside, and besides, you are acting mighty queer. I hope you're not on some kind of drugs or something like that. And why did you bring me a gift? We hardly know each other. We don't even like each other, for that matter." "Because of late, I have been thinking a lot of mean thoughts about you, and I fear you have similar thoughts about me. I know you hate dogs, and my children annoy you when they run and yell outside your windows. But you were once a child, Miss Tallulah, and this is why I want you to come out and play. The child in you wants to play with my child. I know she does." "Nonsense, Lenny. I grew up with dogs," she huffed. "I don't hate dogs. I simply hate crowds, and I don't like endless chit-chat either. If you call this mean, then I am mean." "No, I don't call that mean," Lenny said. I call what we are doing right now getting to know each other better." "Well, have your play, Lenny. I wish to decline, that's that." "Yes, ma'am," Lenny said, taking off her glove and extending her hand. I'm sorry to have bothered you. I hope you have a very Merry Christmas, Miss Tallulah. Goodbye. When Lenny held Miss Tallulah's hand in hers, it felt as cold as ice. Perhaps it was the silliest thing to ask someone her age to come out and play in the snow. Had she asked her own granny, she would probably have stayed inside too. But then she would have baked a cake and simmered hot cocoa on the oven. This is what Lenny knew of childhood. Perhaps she couldn't gift her children with a home life complete with a father and a mother, but she could warm them with her love. This would have to be enough because it was all she had to give. As she ran down the hill toward Mac, she picked up a handful of snow and threw it at his back. "Snowball fight," he yelled with glee. "The enemy has attacked. And remember, Mom, no crying like a sissy if I hit you with a snowball." Soft snow exploded across Lenny's face and down her neck. Soon balls were flying all over the yard, and everybody's cheeks and noses were turning bright red. Lenny's gloves were so crunchy with ice she could hardly form a round ball. They chased each other around the yard. A headless, half-finished snowman served as their silent referee and marked a free zone. All three took turns resting there. Lenny declared Mac the winner after Elizabeth said she didn't want to play anymore. Mac threw one last snowball at Elizabeth, and she chased after him, throwing a few pitches as she ran. Lassie didn't follow. She was running up the hill. Lenny looked up to see Miss Tallulah walking toward them with something in her hands. Lenny couldn't tell what it was. The old woman was bundled from head to toe. Her hat was bright green with long fur covered ear flaps. It looked like a man's cap and was certainly too large for her small head. Her pants looked like rubber waders a fisherman might wear. As Miss Tallulah drew closer, Lenny saw what she was carrying. In her hand, she held branches from her dead azalea bush. "Oh no," Lenny worried. "Is she going to beat me for killing the bush again?" But as Miss Tallulah approached, Lenny could see she looked more shy than angry. "Does your snowman need arms?" Miss Tallulah asked when she reached Lenny. "Yes, I believe he does," Lenny said, choking back hot tears. Mac's mouth dropped open as he looked over at his mother. She gave him a quick, "Be kind to our neighbor" look, and he nodded. He walked over to Miss Tallulah and took the branches from her hands. "Thanks, Miss Tallulah. They will work great," he said. Then he walked over to where Lenny was standing by the snowman, and together they pushed them into place. Elizabeth finished rolling a proper head and set it on top. Then she took Miss Tallulah's hand. "Can you help me find some good eyeballs?" she asked, looking up hopefully at her neighbor's face. "Well, I have a carrot in my pocket if you need a nose. Maybe we can find rocks in the street for the eyes and mouth. When I was your age, that's how my brother and I made snowmen, excuse me." "I know," Mac exclaimed. "I'll go get my bag of marbles." He was back in a flash, and Miss Tallulah and Elizabeth searched the bag until they found 2 matching marbles. They were black with long white streaks. Once the eyes were attached, their snowman looked very distinguished. "Well," Miss Tallulah said, brushing snow off of her gloves, "this has been rather fun. But it's time for me to go home." "Wait, Miss Tallulah," Elizabeth begged. "Before you go, would you like to make snow angels with me?" "Me? Well," she said tentatively, looking over at Lenny. Then she surprised all three by saying, "Why not?" Elizabeth was on the ground in seconds, swishing her arms and legs against the snow. Miss Tallulah walked over, hesitated for a moment, and then lowered her body slowly to the ground. She stretched out with her back against a blanket of thick white snow. Lenny and Mac joined in too. All 4 of them lay silently, fanning their legs and arms into the snow. The sun was shining as the snowball snow clouds moved off toward the Smoky Mountains. Lassie nipped at their feet, fearing something was wrong with her family. Lenny had to sit up and clap her hands to make the dogs stop nipping their snow-covered boots. Lassie stopped nipping, but still feeling left out, she jumped up and stole one of the snowman's arms. She ran it back to Lenny as if they were playing fetch, but no one could toss the branch. No one could toss the branch for her to retrieve because they were all laughing too hard. A bright blue Jeep honked its horn as Joseph and Dawn pulled into Lenny's driveway. Dawn jumped out of the car wearing a heavy parka and a worried look on her face. "Come play," Lenny yelled, waving the snowman's arm in the air. Dawn looked at Miss Tallulah and her mouth dropped open. At first she thought they were wrestling. She knew Lenny had been having a bit of a war with her neighbor, and when she saw them all thrashing around on the ground, she had feared the worst. She told Joseph to honk his horn to break it up. Sing the snow angels. Dawn threw back her head and laughed as only Dawn could laugh. Lenny invited everyone, including Miss Tallulah, in for hot cider and homemade cakes and pies. Miss Tallulah accepted Lenny's offer. Lenny smiled and brushed away another tear as they entered the house together. And no one seemed to mind the messy floor. Mac and Elizabeth busied themselves cleaning up all the paper they had thrown about earlier while Lenny was in the kitchen preparing their snacks. When everyone was settled with something to eat and drink, Dawn grabbed hold of Lenny's arm. "Excuse us," Dawn said to Joseph and Miss Tallulah. "Lenny wanted my advice about a problem with her drapes. She hates them. I promised to share some great ideas I have for them." "Yes," Lenny lied. "I'm thinking about doing something completely different with them." Of course, this was the first time she'd heard Dawn had such plans for her window treatments. "Take your time," Joseph said. He and Mac were reading the instructions for a football game Dawn had given Mac. Miss Tallulah didn't even look up as they exited the room. She seemed captivated by Elizabeth's chatter concerning her latest fashion dolls wearing designer jeans. Lassie was curled up beneath the Christmas tree, sound asleep. Lenny and Dawn walked down the hall to Lenny's bedroom. "What is going on?" Dawn whispered once they got there. "I still can't believe my eyes. When I saw Miss Tallulah laying in your front yard, I thought you had punched her lights out. What gives?" "I know," Lenny whispered. "I can hardly explain it to myself. Last night, I had another dream, Dawn. This one was as wondrous as the other one was frightening, but even that one doesn't scare me anymore. Not after the experience I had. I feel transformed by the truth of love and that I now see in all things. I feel clean and free, empty of what is not true within me, and it's carried over into how I feel about my neighbor, Miss Tallulah." "Wow," Dawn said, shaking her head. "Your whole face is lit up like a light. Happy looks very good on you," she giggled. "Dawn, I have spent my entire life engrossed with form and outer influences. I've wasted half my life in a mental prison, obsessing over my history of failed relationships. Granny's message has shown me I could never be happy permanently living amid such destructive mind chatter and patterns. Granny was simply saying what Jesus said, be perfect, therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect. And perfect is center, and your center, and Miss Tallulah's center. And I cannot express how easy it is to love my neighbor from this new center point of view." "Oh my gosh, girlfriend," Dawn said, laughing. "I love it. I love to hear you talk like your old self again. And those tears rolling down your face are not sad tears? I know those all too well. I can't help but be reminded that what you just said is the greatest of God's commandments, loving yourself and all others with your whole heart. and soul and mind is definitely living from center. I get it. Like your granny said, a center stays where it is. If you don't live from center, focused on the supremacy of love, whatever happens in your life wreaks havoc inside and out. I know, Lenny said. Center is so clear to me now. I love life according to Lenny, Dawn exclaimed. If you fell into mud, you'd come out smelling like a rose, she giggled. That's so sweet of you to say, Lenny said, laughing. Lenny, it's true. Please be kind to Lenny. You are beautiful. Blossoming rose and a treasured friend, Dawn said, reaching out and embracing her friend. You know, Carl Jung used to use similar imagery of the soul's journey in his autobiography, Memory, Dreams, and Reflections. He saw the soul as a perennial bulb possessing many seasons of death and rebirth. Except in my case, I'm not a bulb. I'm a tiny seed that grows into a tree, Lenny said. At different stages of growth, I've been rock hard and prickly. And another thing I learned about the desert rose, it cannot grow without proper drainage. And last night, she giggled, I got drained. Just seeing you happy has made my day, Dawn smiled, handing Lenny a tissue from the dressing table by her bed. Now dry your eyes and let's get our party face on. Lenny nodded in agreement as Dawn whispered, welcome back. They walked arm in arm down the hallway. The aroma of hot cider greeted them as they walked into the kitchen. Joseph handed Dawn a cup, looking at her with adoring eyes. She blew him a kiss. Miss Tallulah visited for almost an hour. She even allowed Lenny to hug her before she walked back up the steep hillside to her home. The hour-long Jeep ride to the mountains was simply a joy ride. Once there, they had another snowball fight and took a long walk along a snowy mountain stream outside the national park. After a couple of hours, they agreed it was time to go home and get warm and dry again. Before long, Lenny was standing by her front door, waving goodbye to her friends. That evening, she read Elizabeth a chapter from Alice in Wonderland. Then Mac read the Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves chapter from the Arabian Nights. All three went to bed with their heads full of magic. In the still of the night before sleep, Lenny drew pictures and recorded new symbols into her dream journal. Then she opened her gift from Dawn and read the first chapter of The Secret Door to Success by Florence Scovel Shinn. Her sentence confirmed her newly acquired belief that one's thoughts and words indeed creates one's outer reality. And to become aware of these seeds is divine indeed. Lenny closed her eyes and thought of Ali Baba. He had opened a door just by saying, "Open sesame." Last night she had opened an inner door, although she hadn't spoken any magic words. All she had to do was surrender. Struggling against a problem made it stay. Not seeing a problem, it vanished. As Lenny's eyes grew too heavy to stay open, she began to dream. The sound of rushing water filled her with peace. She slowly walked toward the sound and saw the same beautiful fountain where she'd earlier met Atlas. He still supported a marble globe, but this time his world was not too heavy for his strong shoulders. Streams of crystal clear water rippled down his muscular forearms. As Lenny smiled up at him, he smiled back. He was a perfection to behold. In the distance, she heard a crowd of people approaching. They circled Atlas and his fountain. Their voices sounded like hummingbirds in search of a bright red blossom. Every man, woman, and child wore white, sparkling dewdrop clothing. Lenny looked down at her clothes and saw she was wearing a similar radiant garment. Her dark-haired stranger stepped forward from the crowd. It was the man who'd been sitting at the Parisian cafe a few nights before. But he was no longer ignoring Lenny. He was reaching out for her hand, and Lenny saw not a trace of bad behind his knowing grin. Lenny took his hand in hers, and then they both reached out for the hands of countless others. Soon the crowd increased both in brilliance and in size, and as all the people circled around the glowing statue of Atlas and his world, Lenny felt as if she knew the best in all of them. Perhaps long ago, they were all divine starseeds in a distant galaxy, one that was merely a heartbeat away. That which has oppressed me has been slain. That which encircled me has vanished. My craving has faded, and I am freed from my ignorance. A chant of victory from the Gospel of Mary Magdalene.
Blessed be. Oh, what a journey.
And honey, with you, what a journey.
Oh my goodness. Well,
And I didn't know I was writing you in my book. In fact, it almost makes me cry because so many of my dreams have been foreseen before they happened in real life.
I wanted to ask you, you never studied writing.
No, I insisted when Bobby told me my angels wanted me to write that I said, you've got the wrong angels, Bobby. He was never wrong. He said, no, I do not. But when God asks you to do something, he will give you the ability. And I started writing when I met my late husband, John, who passed away the year we met in a car accident. And so I gave him, all of this was, I think, was early 40s, somewhere in there, 41, 42. And so I gave him some of my writing. The child's story came spontaneously, and I drew the pictures as my 5-year-old child would draw. But I was trying to write, and I had just shared with him some of the books that I liked. He mainly did not like spiritual or I don't know what you would call it, New Thought books at all, not at all. But I thought he might like Wayne Dyer. So we went on a camping trip, and I read to him, and he read to me a book by Wayne Dyer. I don't remember what it was. So when I handed him my first attempt at writing The Garden of a Desert Rose, he said, "That's not you." I said, "What?" He said, "That's Wayne Dyer. That's not you." He said, you have to write from who you are. And I was his trophy wife. He loved me so much and thought of me as a happy-go-lucky cheerleader type. And he was a computer nerd, he would call himself. And but he was very brilliant, and he was right. And I followed his advice. And so I bought a book that, at some point I bought a book that the man that writes scary, Stephen King, he wrote a book on writing. And I took a course at the University of Tennessee, a beginner's class, a summer class on creative writing. And we just wrote words like they showed up on my skin once in a dream. We just wrote words on a piece of paper, and that came to us, or something that pertained to what we wanted to write about, and drew circles around them, or circle around it, and then connected words that married that central thought. And so I started exploring and doing that to improve, to find my voice, find words that I would speak, not someone like Wayne Dyer would write, but me. And that was a great, great help. And another book I suggest for beginner writers or people that just want to write their myth, which you should know it, and yes, you should write it, was a companion book to a book I loved very much. It was Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain. I can't think of the author, but there was a book I do believe that was writing from the right side of the brain, and that was great too. I did read those to help me along. But it's basically find your voice, and in the middle of the night that comes easy. In fact, before I finished the book, I said, please, I know I've asked my angels, my inner archetypes to help me with this project, but please stop waking me up at 3 a.m. I'm getting tired of this. And you told me the reason of that. I didn't know why. And I'd have to get up. Several times I'd say, okay, like the white unicorn. Okay, I'll write that down tomorrow. And it would be gone. So you should probably share what you told me about that type of inspiration.
Well, the wee hours before dawn are deeply infused with negative ions. That's one perspective. There are some other traditions. I don't recall at this moment what the Hindu masters speak of this time of mourning, but in monasteries and ashrams, people they get up at 3 or 4 in the morning. But that being said has nothing to do with writing. I majored in creative writing,
I know.
but I was writing before I went to college to study it. And like any of the creative, spiritual, you might say any expressions of the creative spirit, it's one thing to take a course, it's one thing to read a book about it.
Mm-hmm.
But writers all have different ways and means and methods of achieving their goal. But what I sense in this is that, of course, you did find your voice, which is the first challenge of a writer, is that finding your voice, because you want to speak with what's known as the authentic self. That's your real voice,
Right.
because it is your real self, your authentic self. And yes, you've accomplished that. So it's one thing you find this voice, and you've got the voice of your authentic self speaking to you. And as I like to say, sometimes we find ourselves taking dictation in the high courts of reality.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what I find when I'm woken up in the middle of the night, or if I'm driving and the voice starts speaking to me, I honor that moment. And I stop what I'm doing and pay homage to it by honoring the voice that's coming to me. Now, I personally didn't, I remember hearing words and not taking note of them, and then noticing that the same words kept repeating as if they were trying to get my attention.
Yes, and they do me that way too.
And so I bought a journal, a blank journal, and I began to use that as to collect these messages, you might say. But that too is a wonderful thing, but that doesn't mean that you find the form of the book you're writing is like a roadmap. Like you've got characters in this book, very alive in their presence. And again, yes, you're taking these characters from your real life, but you're also then infused with an abundance of dreams. But you have taken the story on a journey, and it was a beautiful way that you ended it with finding peace with your neighbor.
Yes.
Now, some writers outline the form of their book. Some writers may in those outlines, decide where the plot points are going to be and what the characters are going to be like and things of
Well,
this
honey,
sort.
that I know, but I couldn't do that. This
But
had
if
to
you
flow.
if you didn't write an outline and it just came to you in a flow, you have to again be very thankful that the blessing of listening to your angels and your guides, and bless his soul, listening to Bobby D, tell you that this is something that you have to do. And you listen to that advice, and you listen to the voice within, and you took note of your dreams, and you have made, I feel, a very profound inner eye witnessing of what seemingly a very common lifestyle, the lifestyle of a single mom with 2 children, twice divorced. You know, most people wouldn't think that an abundance of wisdom could come from that existence. But as I said, in those poems you were writing in the child's story, some of the environment you're in is a family environment. You're in your kitchen, Prince, and you were washing dishes. And you spoke of how you were washing your dishes to see if it would bring about.
Feeling clean, I guess, about my life and myself.
Mhm.
There, in my era, not so much in this, in 2020, but in my era when I was twice divorced, the guilt was pretty heavy. But I don't want to go deep into my ascended masters that have come to me, but they have left me with the most brief, specific, short, like penetrating into my heart, into my where you know, not into my wakeful conscious mind, and it just, you know, if I were doing the exercise I learned in college, in that college class, I would, what I did on my notebooks, dream journals, I would write the simple message. Like I've told you about the message that Jesus came and said, I was looking at a city of cages, and the people in each cage had their head down and were in a dark place of depression and sadness. And we were happy and free. He was at my right hand, and mentally, mental telepathy was happening between us. And I looked over at these, like New York City, but everybody was in a cage, all their own. No 2 people were together in one cage. Everybody had their cage. And I looked over at them, and I looked over at Jesus, and mentally I said, why are they in cages? And we're free. And he mentally said, they think they need a key. Tell them for me. They don't. And I looked back and I saw that there were these old-fashioned keyholes, and but no latch. Everyone that was so sad and depressed and lonely had to do was push the door open and be free, like he and I were free. And I wrote all this down. It was actually, I'm sharing this vision in my alchemy project. And years later, I was in Nashville, and a teacher of the light body, rainbow body, William Henry, he loves to teach with slides of beautiful artwork that have been painted by the masters. And one painting had an angel bringing down the light body to a risen Christ. And it looked like a keyhole. And what popped in my mind after years of having that dream, 20 years of having that beautiful vision was the key is to be whole, that to embrace all of yourself, the shadow, recognize the pain body. My pain body came back. I'm living in my beautiful Victorian dream home with my beautiful beloved now. And the pain body grabbed hold of my neck and tried to choke me right after I built this home. I was walking around the halls I thought I was awake, but I was in a lucid etheric body state, whatever you call it. I'm not educated in what I'm experiencing. I'm just experiencing it. And he tried to grab a hold again, but even reading this again reminded me that a lot of times when you really, really let go of your story, whatever it has been, you're not your story, that pain body can't hold on any longer. He's got to go. And honestly, I haven't seen him since. I saw him in my 30s and I saw him in my 40s, and now he's gone. And good riddance. So that's the best I can describe how I write.
So blessed be. I would like to reread this Womb of Dreamtime, because accompanying this poem, there's an image of her doing dishes. And it goes, I dream of realms where angels fly, and vast loved ones long after our last goodbye. Words captured in my journal haunt me like dark truth unopened. I hold a serpent in my hand and fear I'll die of fright. I fall into deep darkness with images that haunt me ever after. My thoughts keep scattering like bubbles in my sink. They're hard to hold, but they are my only trophy. My fear wears a mask, as does my pain inside my brain. What seeds have my thoughts planted today? Have they planted a future like the glitter atop my candy cane apron? I scour my dishes and my thoughts for hopeful possibilities. That's a beautiful line. I scour my dishes and my thoughts for hopeful possibilities. Can a desert rose grow in such poor soil? The sands beneath my roots are full of tears and limitations. As I watch dirty water drain, I journey back from my looking within place. Oh, how cruel and careless I have been to me. The house grows long, dark shadows, as does my heart and mind. I carry armloads of presents down the hall, and there unseen gifts of dancing stillness awaiting me. I'm sorry, that line should be, are there unseen gifts of dancing stillness awaiting me? Another beautiful line. Can a desert rose grow in such poor soil? And the answer is yes. Resoundingly yes, a desert rose can grow in such poor soil. And this has been the journey through the Garden of the Desert Rose, written by my beloved Deborah L. Kelley. The Garden of the Desert Rose. Oh.
Thank you, Louis.
Well, that's it for here and now. But until we meet again, this has been Louis Marie Blanche thanking you for listening to Conversations with Elders on Glastonbury Radio 432. Bless you.
Quantum physics in the kitchen sink, the energy that follows the thoughts you think. Quantum physics and the cosmic sea, laws of nature too heavy for me. It's too cosmic, much too cosmic for me. Much too cosmic, much too